Here we go.
That ain't me because I don't have any paper.
That's me.
Okay, I can hear it all. But we're going to come up in 5. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. There is so much to talk about all the time. It's just hard to choose these stories, but I see a through line through some of the stories that we're going to be covering today. It's Empire. We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the Republic. And empires, well, they collapse at 250 years. They last that long. So the question is, as Dr. King posed it 60 years ago, where do we go from here, chaos or community? Got to talk about this because nothing could be more symbolic than having our nation's capital, not the capital with an O, but the capital with an A, the city, completely manned by the federal government, by ICE, by the FBI, the National Guard. They federalized the police. And governors from 3 red states have sent in additional troops. What does that mean when we saw a more than 30% decline in major crimes last year in the district? What is going on here? Well, many people feel that this is really an authoritarian move by the president, that he's really consolidating power. And let's be very clear. We have seen the consolidation of power in the presidency for decades. But it has come to another kind of fruition under this presidency. But we've been moving in this direction for a minute. And, it's so authoritarianism. And it's just like sin. It creeps up on you. And there it is. And there it is. And so now when we think of the March on Washington and the anniversary of the March on Washington and all of these great marches, how do you have a march when you are surrounded by ICE, the FBI, the police have been federalized, and the National Guard? How does that work? The optics on that just don't work for me, and they don't work for freedom-loving people everywhere. And people all around the country are looking at us, all around the world too, and they're asking what is happening. But all around the country, more and more people are beginning to ask the question, what is going on here? And so I wanted to get 2 of the most brilliant minds I know to talk about this today. People who are residents of what we lovingly call the DMV. I spent a lot of time there, went to Howard, lived there for a few years afterwards, and have a special place in my heart for Washington. So it is very painful to see footage of people in camouflage next to military vehicles stationed, well, certainly all over the Northwest quadrant. And DC has Northwest, Southwest, Northeast, Southeast, but they have a presence that is now permeating the city. Mm-hmm. And this city, which was Chocolate City for so long, now it's Swirl City, but it is a largely Black city. It is a Democratic city. And it has been captured. It's like the mayor has been pushed aside. We're going back to the days of prior to Mayor Washington. He was the first mayor of Washington, D.C. It was like the playground for the very powerful up until the 60s. And then, of course, Marion Barry changed the whole nature of Washington, D.C. and what you could do with city government. So let's talk about this. What does this mean? What about D.C. statehood? What are the economic implications of D.C. remaining in effect a colony, basically on par with Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands, Micronesia? We just keep on going. That's really the status that it has. Most people in Washington, the overwhelming majority of them, do not live any place but the district. They live and they work there. some of us float in and out with an administration or with a congressman in either house or with an administration. Yeah, but most people in Washington, that is not the case. The overwhelming majority are Washingtonians and they're proud of it. And they have no representation in Congress. Their delegate doesn't have a vote. They don't have two senators, which they could have. Their population speaks to that. And so let's talk about this because the political implications, the social implications of a city of a people who have no representation, who have no voice. Um, can you imagine what two senators from Washington, what difference that would have made when they were debating the big beautiful bill, or when you would try to think of ways to save voting rights or a woman's reproductive rights? Yeah, when you don't have representation, Reverend Jesse Jackson and his long time colleague, Reverend Frank Watkins, told us you've got to have the vote. That is the vote. That is the right that guarantees all others. And maybe that's why we got it last, Daryl. It was the hardest one to get when we came out of slavery, but it tells you something about the vote. So let's get right to it, everybody. Um, because I want to talk with you about it, Daryl. Let me start with you. Um, what do you make? Because you're a former prosecutor, in addition to being the chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Indeed, you and Barbara Arnwine have just really dedicated your lives to saving our vote, Dr. Malvo. But there's something else that's going on here. I mean, there are a lot of layers to this occupation, if you will, of Washington, D.C. So tell me, what do you see? Because now people are beginning to push back. You know, and Washington is a it's a Democratic town, but it's also a conservative town in many ways. And so for some Washingtonians to be taken to the streets to protest this, I think is noteworthy.
Well, thank you, Santita, and you're absolutely right. The district, the DC, as we refer to it, the district is beginning to respond, and you are beginning to see responses. But let's understand how we got to where we are, right? Because we got to the position of having DC residents and members of the DMV, District, Maryland, and Virginia, going into DC to respond to these federal officers. Because what's happening is that these officers are going into the district, these federal officers are going into the district, they have no training in dealing with community policing or anything along those lines. That's not what they've been trained to do. If you're National Guard, you're not trained on how to police streets and communities in the District of Columbia or anywhere else for that matter. I mean, if you're a member of ICE or Secret Service, same thing. They're the same folks that are going into the district and going into these areas. Well, what's beginning to happen is you're seeing a lot of the federal officers that are not trained in dealing with these areas going into some of these communities and trying to intimidate the residents and getting up in their faces and causing all kinds of interactions, right? Forceful interactions with them. There's one example that I've been lifting up where, we had a young brother that was talking to his friends on his front porch in the district, in his yard in the district, smoking smoking cigarettes. And the federal officers see this young brother and a couple other young brothers that are there just talking it up as they do on porches, and decides to confront them, saying that there's something that's wrong with it. And of course, the young brother tells him, get the hell away from me. Get away from me. We don't need you. There's nothing that's going on. But they're trying to use that position of intimidation to spark some type of reaction from some of the district residents so that they get a response, so they get a hostile response. And if they can get that hostile response, then they can try to justify having more federal officers going in and trying to declare some type of, overtake. And this is the reason that we've got to be here because these people are unruly, they're not following the laws. And all of a sudden you have this major incident that's there in the district that's really caused by the federal officers' presence themselves, which is the intention behind some of this. This is the reason that you're beginning to hear talk about maybe Oakland's going to be next, or Baltimore is going to be next. That same theory, that same type of practice is what's going to be attempted. Kudos to the district residents, because right now they've kept their cool and they've laid it out, and they're using their cell phones the same way the officers are trying to should be using their body cameras to film what's happening. And let me just say this, one of the things that really angers me is that I come not only as a former prosecutor, not only as a current criminal defense attorney, but also as a former local elected official in dealing with policing on community levels and on small area levels, county levels, city levels. One of the things, if the administration was truly interested in assisting in dealing with crime issues that exist in any city, the first thing they would do is sit down and talk to the mayor, the city council, to the commissioner of police to find out, what can we do to supplement what you're doing? What is it that you're doing? How can we augment what you're doing? We want to work with you, not take over and act like we have the answers when we know nothing about the city, nothing about your area. That's how partnerships work. If you're truly interested in fighting crime, if you're truly interested in working for the best interests of the community, that's how it's done. Not what they're doing now. That simply tells us that this is political theater and not substantive help for a community, Santita.
Well, is this also a pretext for really the installation of a police state? We saw the Washington Post publish an article this week where they reported on leaked documents from the Pentagon that outlined that in the post-2020 world, not just COVID, but specifically George Floyd, this is how we will put down civil unrest. I think back 20 years ago, the head of the Director of National Intelligence said that this economic inequality, I think this was in 2006, he said that economic inequality was going to promote social instability. So watch out. And 20 years later, here we are. And so I've got to wonder, Daryl Jones, if this is a pretext for that, because these are people who don't respect home rule in Washington. So of course they wouldn't ask the mayor because they don't have any respect for her. And I think that's part of the reason that Marion Barry was stuck, he was just stuck in their craw, because he would not be disrespected. So, I mean, because we're watching authoritarianism creep in so many ways, and not just here, but we're being monitored all day long.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Santita. I mean, what I believe we're witnessing out of the District of Columbia, in the District of Columbia right now, with what the president and the administration is doing, is that they're just trying to goad some type of reaction there, and then you're going to see the takeover start to really get larger, because it justifies their existence. So now they're going to call in more. We've heard 6 other states that have offered up their National Guards if they're needed. What you're going to see is that once they can spark some type of reaction, some type of negative reaction, some type of violent, something they can label as a violent reaction, you're then going to see them open up the floodgates and try to bring in all of these federal agents to take over the city. The same thing that they're going to attempt to do in Baltimore, the same thing they're going to try to do in Oakland, same thing they're probably going to try to do at different Democratic-led cities across the country. In Chicago. Absolutely. And Chicago is clearly going to be one of the target, because one of the things that we know is that Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson has already said, I'm not backing down. I'm standing with my people and I'm pushing forward. And so, it's already, made for confrontation right there. So look for stuff to happen in Chicago. Look for this this is just a testing ground. DC is just a testing ground. Once they got the testing ground down in DC, got the concept on how they can approach it, how they can come at it, then they're going to carry it to other cities across the country.
Very quickly, before I go to Dr. Malvo, is it easier to have DC as a testing ground because it's not a state?
Because it's not a state. Absolutely. DC becomes a testing ground because there is no governor or anything like that. They don't have the state. They don't even have a member of Congress that's the voting member of Congress that can push stuff through and fight for them right now. I mean, that's what they've done to the District of Columbia. When we talk about it as an occupied territory, that's exactly what it is. The federal government is occupying the District of Columbia. So if DC had statehood, they could say, hold up. No. we're taking care of our folks. We got it. We are electing our people. Our people are, all of that. That's all in place. That's not what the district has right now. And had the district been a state, the 51st state of the union, we'd have a whole different view, and they would have different authority in order to control and what happens in their borders. That's not what they are. That's not what's happening. And as a result, the federal government really does control the district.
Well, Dr. Malvo, you come at this from a lot of different directions. You're an economist, of course, and you are the president emeritus of Bennett College for Women. So you've been the president of a college of young Black students who in Greensboro, who with that history, who are politically active. Students are. And my concern is, I mean, how does a college president protect the students when a city is occupied, particularly at a time like this? How would you approach this? Because if the mayor can't say anything to the president.
Well, the mayor can say something. The fact is that the mayor has not. The mayor has been rather milquetoast until, I think, Friday, when she did put out a strong statement that said we would resist. The Attorney General of the District of Columbia sued the federal government. Therefore, Pam Smith, the chief of police, Pam Bondi had said that the guy who's the head of DEA was going to supersede the chief of police. And the court said, oh no, that she is still the chief of police. However, under the 1973 Home Rule Act, the president can ask the mayor for assistance, but he has to ask. He cannot just throw these ICE people up, but there's so many of them. If I were the president of Howard University, I would be meeting with the mayor and the police chief to say, we need to know who is coming on our campus and when. You are Howard alum, so Howard is sitting in the middle of the city. People walk through the campus, whether they're students, faculty, staff, or not, because it's located in the middle of the city. So you could see a scenario where 3 ICE people would walk through the Howard campus and stop to talk to people. And basically, the president of the university ought to give directives to their, being the president of the university is like being a mayor of a little city.
Absolutely.
So basically, the citizens need to know ICE might be around. These are your rights. Let me tell you, last evening, you just met my lovely godchild, Matthew Brown, AP reporter, who was amazing. And I had to go get him a sandwich for today because we don't eat the same kind of food. And I'm walking up 14th Street, and there's some people who seem to be ICE. I don't know. But a white couple challenged them because they're stopping and talking to people. And they challenged them and said, what are you doing? And they said, move on and mind your business. And they said, no, this is our neighborhood. This is my business. And there was a little back and forth. I've been in this house for 27 years. I've been on this block since I moved to DC in 1994. Even though I'm a native San Francisco, California girl to the bone, I am a Washingtonian. I can't use like y'all Washington people say the 5th generation Washingtonian, but I live here. I own property here. And so I feel the same way that couple felt. It's my business. Walk inside, and the manager was talking to some other people. He said, I'm not going to comply. Where's this form? Matt said he saw this trio of white ICE people going restaurant to restaurant in Mount Pleasant, which is a heavily Latino neighborhood. A lot of us are heavily Latino, going restaurant to restaurant with this form, asking if they plan to comply. And I don't even think it's a legal form. It's called Image. Matt texted it to me, but it basically talked about restaurants cooperating with government, and they want I-9s on all your employees and all that. And the whole, I shouldn't out him because they might, if they're listening, they'll go get him. But he said, so I'm not going to tell you, it was a Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, or Safeway, But he said, I'm not going to comply. And he, people are being put in a position of blowing the whistle on their employees, blowing the whistle on their friends. I have another story about a young man who, interesting young brother who is on the spectrum, and he's a rabid environmentalist. So whenever he sees me on the street, he'll say, Miss Julianne, you need to have a cloth bag, because I may have a paper bag. So he doesn't believe in paper bags. He has 3 items: cookies, a juice, and some fresh fruit. And he's carrying items. This person stops him and asks him if he shoplifted them. And he was forced to go back to the store. He did not have a receipt because he had 3 items. If I had 3 items, I wouldn't have a receipt either. Blessedly, the security guy, when the guy came back in, said, "Man, did you forget something?" He's behind him. That just squashed the whole thing. Well, this is what's going to happen, and those who are most vulnerable would be the young men, young Black and brown men, and as Daryl said, they're looking for something.
Yeah.
They're looking for something, for somebody to say something to them. So last evening, coming back down 14th Street, they were stopping this couple of kids, and I asked a woman. I said, it was a woman. It was a Black woman. I said, "What?" I said, "What's the issue here?" She said, "Does it concern you?" I said, "Yes, it does." And she says, "Well, tell me what you think." I said, "I think you need to mind your own GD business." And being myself, I was not polite about it. And she said, she said, "I need to check to see if they're legal." I said, "Oh, please." I said, "Why don't you just move on?" And she said, "Can I see your ID?" I said, "Oh, hell no." And I said, "What do you want my ID?" I said, "I'm a little old lady in my neighborhood, minding my business. You're interfering with policemen." I said, "Okay, do me a favor." She said, "Well," I said, "Arrest me." Daryl, you or Barbara Arnwine would have got the next call. I said, "Arrest me. Make my day." I said, "Can I go home and put my sandwich down first?" I said, "Then you can arrest me if you want to." And then somebody walking up said, "Malvo, how you doing?" And I said, "Oh, okay, I'm busted." I wanted them to arrest me. I had nothing to do last evening except write. So, I got about 5 or 6 lawyers on speed dial, including Ben Crump. I got a few civil rights activists on speed dial from Barbara Arnwine. So arrest me, EMF. Make my what day. But I mean, of course, I'm a lightning rod and a tick tick.
Wait, but you also have access to people.
Exactly, and most people don't. That's why I stopped when they were talking to those young men, because and then one of the little brothers, his parents must be lawyers. The woman said, "Well, you still haven't identified me." He said, "And I don't have to." And I'm like, "Mm-hmm." And so she said, they started walking away, and she said, "I'm talking to you." I said, "Y'all brothers keep on walking." I said, "Keep on walking." And she said, "I could charge you with interference." I said, "Again." I said, "All I have to do this evening is write 1,000 words." I said, "I can do that in my head." So I put my hands up and said, "Make my day. We can have some fun here." But then like you said, I have access. I have an attitude. But a lot of people don't. So, contextually, I hope they stay off our campuses, but I hope that every president, we have many universities, colleges, and universities here in DC, I hope that they issue a letter to their community saying, this is what you need to do. You are not obliged to provide ID. You're not obliged to do these things, because basically it is intimidation. And a fellow who lives up the street, he owns a bar on 12th and U. And he told me, he said, the bar is empty. He said, there's one woman, there's a couple on the dance floor dancing, and that's it. Usually on a Saturday night, that place would be crowded. But the clientele is younger. It's mixed, Black, brown, and basically a lot of people aren't coming out. So this person who said he was coming into the presidency to deal with the economy is having a negative effect on the economy of the District of Columbia, because a lot of people aren't coming out. Another restaurant, which is on 14th, the woman told me she was closing early because that evening they only had like 8 tables. Well, this is a small restaurant, but it turns over a lot. So she said there's only been 8 people in here this evening. And usually it's an Indian place that I love. You have to, if you don't have a reservation, you will stand in line. But their food is that good that you will stand in line. But she said it's just been empty. That's what's going on. Not only is it the fear of intimidation, but just a lot of our businesses who have already been affected by COVID, who've already been affected by the shrinking economy, are now affected because in the hospitality industry, a lot of people are not coming out. And who are you affecting? The people who live off tips, because they're not making a living wage. And we just had a piece of legislation passed that reduced, there used to be a mandatory thing, and it reduced what the employer has to do. So you have to pretty much, again, live off your tips. Well, if you don't have any, what are you living off? And in some of these restaurants that are kind of gritty, you know, Chinese restaurant that, you know, prices are low, so the tips are low. Um, those are people who basically are having a hard time. So the notion and the sense of occupation is real and is angering people. I sent you a video of a whole community who saw these people and they're starting yelling at them like, get out of my neighborhood, because they're aware of the chilling effect that this has. It's no coincidence that, of course, he's picked on cities that have black mayors. He's talking about Oakland, Barbara Lee, Chicago, Brandon, talking about, well, he's not going to touch his buddy, his friend,
New York.
Eric Adams, but
Very good.
he has a lot more latitude in DC because we just got home rule in 1973. We didn't have home rule. Yeah, and so he still has some rights over the district. We don't have a governor to say the National Guard cannot come through here. In every Brandon will not. What's his name? Pritzker, the governor of Chicago of Illinois, forgive me, is not going to have the Illinois National Guard flooding Chicago, no matter what that man says. That man who lives in a house that enslaved people built. He can't do Chicago. He can't do Oakland because Gavin is time enough for him. Gavin Newsom, the mayor of California, the governor of California, is time enough for him. I mean, he could go find little pockets in Florida. He could try some of the cities in North Carolina. But again, you have mayors who will stand up, in some cases, governors who will not. This is political theater. It's a distractive tactic. Look, he doesn't want us to know about Jeffrey Epstein. And you know there's some information in those files. This takes us away from that. He just got his behind handed to him by Putin. I mean, he got his whole behind hand. I won't be happy until I get a ceasefire. Well, I guess you're not going to be happy for a while. You folded. You gave him the red carpet, a ride in the presidential limo, and he gave you the back of his hand or the back of his booty, whichever one you prefer. So this is just distractive. But it's affecting a community that is vibrant. It's affecting people who basically need tourism to live. They painted a picture of DC, Santita, and Gerald. Y'all know this because we live here. A picture that is quite discordant from the way that we live. There's a little white friend who lives in Iowa, actually. She was supposed to come. And she said, is it safe to still come? She was going to stay at the Holiday Inn around the corner from me on Rhode Island. Because I told her to stay nearby. She can't stay up in here. So I told her to stay nearby. And she said, well, is it still safe? I'm like, girl, please. I said, I will come down and walk you to breakfast every day if that will make you feel better. She said, but on the paper, they said that people are running around raping people. I said, no. I said, do you think I will live in a place where people are running around raping people?
But Dr. Malveaux,
it's a picture of DC that is lawless. We have crime. Every large urban area has crime.
Everybody does, but Dr. Malveaux, this is illogical. It's probably the most surveilled city in the country. You have the most powerful people in the world who live there, or at least they have second and third homes there. You have the members of both houses of Congress. You have all of the secretaries of all the members of the cabinet live there. I mean, my father put it this way when I was looking at college. He said, well, the upside of Washington is that global news is local news there. I mean, when you go to Sidwell Friends and St. Albans and NCS and Episcopal, kings and queens send their children to those schools. I mean, look, I know my family went to those schools. I didn't go, but they did. And that's Washington. So Washington's never going to get but so out of control because it's just not that kind of town. But so to me, this is like, okay, what is really going on here? Well, because to me, I'm looking at the police state, and I say that, and that's why I keep going back to the social conditions that can promote that, because you can now have, and you know this, Dr. Malveaux, so well. I mean, as a student of history, as do you, Daryl Jones. but we forget history. We're so ahistorical. It's
Again and
shameful.
again and again. Yeah.
The Great Depression had communists, had socialists. You had great social upheaval. You had to have FDR, and he had to institute these programs because the country was coming apart. White people were infuriated, and I pointedly point out white people because they were starving.
Mm-hmm.
And the oligarchs, they stole everything, so there was nothing left. People went. My great grandmother kept her money in the mattress until she died. And you know what? Now I get it. It took me a whole lifetime to get it, but
Well,
she
I tell
came out of the depression. You went to the bank. There was no FDIC, and your
you,
money was gone.
let me tell you, Dr. Maya once told me, always keep some cash. Always keep some cash because you never know what's going to happen. It was funny one day. She was talking to a bunch of us and she said, yeah, y'all have all those ATMs and you have this on
Thank
your
you.
phone. She said, what if there's no electricity? She said, keep yourself some cash. Now, let me just say this about this whole thing. This all was precipitated because some little white boy who used to work for Doge, 19-year-old
A
on Capitol,
19-year-old.
like, wait a minute, on Capitol Hill at 3 a.m. What if this was a woman on Capitol Hill at 3 a.m.? Well, why was she there? And I promise you, that little white boy mouthed out to some brothers and they whipped his behind. That's what happened. I promise you, I don't have any facts, but here's what I know. People on the hill are not walking around jacking people. They said something to somebody. They're coming out the bar at 3 a.m., drunk as a skunk, got out of order, and
Mhm.
somebody took them to school.
But
Now,
Dr.
I'm
Malvo,
not
let me,
endorsing behind whipping as a matter of social control, but all I'm
yeah.
saying is this boy is not blameless, and the questions that need to be asked, and this is a disproportionate response. Somebody got jacked, they got their butt beat, they were not killed. This is
But
a very so you take over a whole city because one little white boy got jacked.
but
That's
even that,
absurd.
but Dr. Malvo, I have to jump in here because even that to me sounded odd because he was carjacked by 10 people.
That doesn't even sound
And
right.
that
That's
doesn't
not how. No, that's
sound.
what he came out the bar drunk. He mouthed off to a gaggle of young brothers and sisters, and they went off on him.
But
Most
but but
chargebacks
also,
happen when one person grabs your keys, or it might be two, but it's not 10 or 15. So
but
we're
even
not getting the whole story, nor will we ever get the whole story. But here's
yeah,
the piece of the
because
story.
wait a minute, because he's an ex-Doge employee. Doge is incredibly unpopular. You
Mhm.
don't know who knew him. Yeah,
That part.
honestly, I go there because of my background. When I said, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
you are not, you are no, first of all, you are known by your sobriquet, Big Balls. Okay.
What?
You want,
Who gets a name like Big Balls? That tells you everything you need about him. He's likely to be a rapist. Who calls somebody Big
no, no,
Balls?
no, no, no. But I mean, I took it to that this is someone who has a tremendous amount of swagger because he's an expert at what he does. If he's 19 and working for Doge, he was pulled out of school. You know how it works because he is like Ed Snowden, brilliant in that space.
Mm.
And you are put in the intelligence community, and you study. That's what they do. Everybody was talking about Ed Snowden didn't go to college. No, no, no. They found out that this guy was a computer genius, to put it in broad terms. And then they took him into intelligence. That's what they do. You know that.
Well, Mr. Big Balls got his big butt beat,
He
and
did. Oh, now, well, we're not. Now, please do not, don't get so
I'm
excited.
not endorsing behind beating as a way of
You see what your pearl just said? Don't you repeat it. You just look at what she wrote. Okay. Okay. Just be quiet, Chaparral. Just be quiet. Quiet. Let's just say she's not upset that he was beaten. Okay, everybody. Let's just
Well, I can say,
okay.
but here's the other thing. There's a form of economic violence that's happening here. And the
Mhm.
economic violence is when you have low income areas that are located next to $3 and $4 and $5 million condos.
Yeah.
That is a form of economic violence. When people are pushed out of their neighborhoods to build these $3 and $4 and $5 million condos, when a corner store, which might have extended you a little credit, is replaced by these gourmet, like a lady told me a few months ago at Whole Foods. She worked there, and she said some of this cheese costs more a pound than I make an hour.
Wow.
you know, and then,
But
so
that's Washington.
that's
I mean,
that's economic violence. When you
yeah.
locate people next to that, it's a form of violence. So people keep talking about violence. First of all, how dare that man, 47 felony convictions, call anybody who's a criminal a barbarian? So he is like the barbarian in chief. And seriously, if you're going to call people barbarians, look in the mirror. That's number one.
No. America needs to look in the mirror. Dr. King said 60 years ago, and it's still true today, that it broke his heart to say that the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my government, and we still
Yeah.
are.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mean, I've had
Gentrification is a
you
advanced
see that,
form of economic violence.
and you
Right.
see that all over Washington. I
All
mean,
over
now
Washington, all over
an
Chicago,
an
all
attached
over.
house that needs to that an attached house in Washington that needs to be gutted is $1 million.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
But
even
one of the things that we see happening though from all of this, one of the things we see happening now from all of this that is sort of going away quietly, and I think that's the intention of why they have this distraction that's going on. No one's talking about the economics. No one's talking about how much it costs for rent in the various places across the country. No one's talking about the price of food. No one's talking about the people's ability to make a living in the environment that's now being the economic environment that's now being created. We've been focused now, and they've been pushing it away from that and pushing us over to the occupancy of DC. Let me just add another layer to that and what's going on, because Dr. Malveaux was 100% on point, I believe, when she was talking about not just Howard University that's in the district, but American University, UDC, Gallaudet,
George
GW,
Washington, Georgetown.
right, George Washington, Georgetown. All these schools are going to be impacted by are being impacted by what's happening right now. Let's add another layer to that, because one of the things that Dr. Malveaux lifted up as she was speaking was about our migrant brothers and sisters that are in the District of Columbia. Because one of the things that happens when they're approached, if you're approached as a migrant, you have a green card so you're lawfully here, but you've got to carry your papers with you. So they can approach you at any point in time and ask you for your papers and start.
And I've been telling people to put their papers on their phone, to make sure they have their identification on their phone.
Oh, wait a minute. But Dr. Malveaux, when the ICE people on your street and you are in an affluent neighborhood, when they tell a white couple, move on, this is none of your business. I'm reading a story because I've been catching them, although the people in the government are denying this. This is from NBC News, and other outlets have reported that some of the National Guard troops who are now being deployed in Washington are set to carry arms. Not all of them, but some of them. And I'm wondering, wait a minute. And Dr. Malveaux, Chapeau made the point, did they ever think that this young man was attacked by someone who he fired, essentially?
Well, these are all teenagers, so I don't think that I saw the comment, and it's a good point. I just said that these are all teens.
Yeah, no, but in Washington, I don't know who's who and who's been touched by what.
That's true, because it could have been one of their mamas who was fired.
Well, I mean, and you don't know who's trying to strike the match, okay? Because there are a lot. We come out of the civil rights movement. You can't trust anything. You always have to ask a lot of questions, because the thing is, the Doge cuts. The $1 trillion cuts to our healthcare system will not hit until after the midterms.
Yes.
As though we're feeling the pain now, the pain is going to hit.
It's going to intensify
for real in another year. And to me, these people are getting ready for the pain to hit and to try and shut down the country. I just don't think. I'm wondering how that is going to work. I mean, and I'm just saying, these are the questions that I'm asking, because I'm asking, because you have students. That's why I went to you, Dr. Malveaux. I remember when my father was running for president, a major newspaper came up on the campus and started asking students about me. They didn't ask too many, because the students went to the dean of student affairs. And they said, first of all, they told the reporter, get off the campus.
Yep.
Then they went to him and they said, look, you need to call this paper. She's at school. She's minding her business. We do not appreciate them coming up on this campus, because they were being very protective.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering with these students who have had the avenues of protest shut down to them, Dr. Melvo,
Oh yeah.
quite frankly.
Mhm.
And and now the international students, you know this better than anyone,
Oh
who
yeah.
are paying full tuition. The university environments, you know better than anyone. Now people are frightened there.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. And this whole thing, first of all, the nativism that this administration has.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, the hostility to people of color, people who are
Mhm.
brown, who people are not white that people have. It has plummeted international applications, which
Mhm.
might be good for that man, but frankly, for most universities, it's not, because as you say, these people are paying full tuition.
Yeah.
It's implicitly they're subsidizing the students who are receiving financial aid. And so when you look at that, you know, Harvard, a third of their enrollment is international students. If that goes down, that has all kind of issues with admissions. But then the third, we look at our universities, but also look at our infrastructure. You
Mhm.
can't have a wealthy city like DC without working class people to wait the tables, to
Mm-hmm.
drive the
Right.
Ubers, to take care
Staff the hill.
of the children and the elders. It reminds me so much of enslavement, just
Mm.
because I'm writing in my book, where, these white people couldn't feed their children. They had to have an enslaved woman feed their children because they didn't know how to do that. They did not know how to do anything. Now, though, I'm not saying that all the wealthy don't know how to do anything. I'm generalizing, but we need these working class people. And basically, most cities, I think DC does, I'm not sure, but have programs where our teachers, our police officers, and others have some kind of a subsidy, because the wage that they have is not a living wage if
Mm-hmm.
they want to live a middle class life. And you, of course, don't want your teachers, living in encampments. And speaking of encampments, they have gone and destroyed several encampments of
Mm-hmm.
homeless people. There's a paper, I'm sure Daryl knows it. You probably know it too. Street Sense. It's
Mm-hmm.
the
Absolutely.
homeless brothers and sisters sell usually outside of grocery stores. And there's a guy there that I talk to all the time. And he said as soon as they said the National Guard was coming, he said there are four of us in an apartment. We told this there are four of us, basically, he said, in a room. He said, but we can't afford anything else. He said, we can't live outside anymore because all of our belongings are going to be confiscated. And that's what they're doing. Again, we wouldn't have a homeless problem if we had affordable housing. But all that man has a way of lighting a match, as you said, lighting a match, and he never thinks through what he's doing.
You
I
know
mean,
what?
I know you
But
think he's smarter
I
than he
remember.
is. It's not him, it's the people behind him. And we all know that. But I don't think there was long-term thinking about flooding this district with National Guard, FBI, and ICE.
See,
Three
what they're not
agencies.
thinking through, Dr. Melvo and Daryl Jones, are the repercussions. This is where hubris gets you. When you have gotten away with mistreating people for so long that you really think that it's okay.
Oh yeah.
And they have
But
really, because now we have seen these town hall meetings. These, I got a brother in Congress right now, and many of these Republicans do not want to go home for the meetings.
they don't want to go home.
No, I mean, because they know how angry
Mhm.
the people are. The people. And so when I see this looks to me to be pretextual, because the Pentagon paper showed you this Pentagon paper 2025 showed you that they are saying, wait a minute, this is how we are going to quell social unrest. As I was saying at the top, we saw history has shown us that there was massive social unrest in the 20s and the 30s and moving into coming in the Depression. People
Mhm.
were furious. The poor white people were going to march on Washington and have an encampment on the mall.
Mhm.
I
Well, it
mean,
may yet happen. It may yet happen. And the video that
yes.
I sent you, these are middle class white people. That's what Matt said. He said he was surprised at people. He
At
said
least they
middle class
used to
white
be.
people yelling, no, yelling and screaming, "Get out of my neighborhood! cursing at the
Yeah.
whoever they were, the National Guard or the FBI. And that's the other thing. You got three agencies with murky, and Daryl can probably speak to this better than I can, but with murky lines of communication,
Mhm.
lines of responsibility. So who is this that's stopping me? Is it ICE? Is it the FBI?
Right.
Is it the National Guard? Is it DCPS?
But
Who
Dr.
is it?
Malveaux, they're covered. Their faces are covered, so you don't even know who these. I mean, and some of them are actually. You have some really awful actors out here who are not part of these agencies at all, who are assaulting people.
And you have I saw this. I did he think he was ICE, but he might have been FBI. He was harassing somebody. A bunch of people, myself included, started asking questions. That dude covered his badge, immediately covered his badge, and ran out the store. Because I went after him until one brother said, he said, "Ma'am," he said, "you're entirely too old for this." I said, "No, I ain't. You know, I have a cane.
Mhm.
I could trip it with my cane."
Oh Lord, help me, Lord, please.
But what she's laying out, though, what Dr. Malveaux is laying out, though, Santita, is what I was trying to say in the very opening section of this, where we talk about policing being a community-based effort, a community-based situation, because you want officers that are familiar with the community and the communities that are familiar with the officers. You know, that's how policing best works as a module. You know, what we have happening here is precisely what Dr. Malveaux just said. If you have officers that are not from the area, don't know the area, covering up their face with masks, and then act in any way they want to act because they know no one there knows them. So they're going to do whatever they want
And
to
they
do,
can
and they
get
think
away
they have
with
the authority of law, the power of government to do it. So, you know, that's the problem of what's being created there. And the last piece I wanted to put in with regards to my immigration side of it, gotta remember, when we're talking about the working class people, when we're talking about all the servers, Dr. Malveaux spoke of the restaurant where there was no one going in. Well, guess what? There's not going to be people there to cook, to clean, to do any of the other things that are coming from those migrant classes that may have been there previously. So all of that's going to be disappearing because you have ICE that's there, that's now trying to intimidate those folks that are there, that have been doing those, performing many of those services for the District of Columbia and for other areas around the country. That's the net result of what happens when you have uncontrolled policing and a takeover that's going on as it is in the District of Columbia from the federal government, Santita.
But I
and
would
no
assert that this is to
accountability,
make
is
us
it?
compliant, frightened and compliant. See, because if you fill them with fear, Dr. Malveaux, people tend not to protest. You tend not to
That's,
speak out. I mean, because this is the social engineering, right?
Mhm.
I mean, by killing civil rights workers, by killing Goodman, Shorter, and Cheney, and Viola Liuzzo, and so many people behind Dr. King's death. And I can tell you this because it was something I experienced as a child. People started getting killed. I mean, it was awful. And it was traumatizing to me as a little girl to find out that this person and that person who who was my parents' friend, oh, they were killed last night or something happened.
Mhm.
And you hear these hushed tones. Now, my parents, in the face of that, kept on going. But a lot of people will not. But I
right.
think that,
And a lot of people
but
can't, Santita. I mean, a
yeah,
lot of people can't. When we look at what's happening in Texas, you have the
yeah,
state representative. Some people can hold out forever. Others, they're not giving them their paychecks. They got to come to get their paycheck
yeah.
where they used to be able to have direct deposit. They
Mhm.
have children. They may have spouses who aren't working because they have small children. There's a limit to how long some people can hold on. Others can hold on longer. But what we're seeing is people really I mean, this is beyond intimidation. It's an attempt to break people down.
Yeah.
And
Great.
and when you see people saying things like, well, like my little white friend in Iowa, she doesn't really have anything to worry about, but she's afraid to come to see. She still hasn't decided whether she's going to come or not over the Labor Day weekend because she says she's afraid because she's hearing that man. And I'm behaving today, Santita. I ain't called him anything out of his name, but that man. But you
You,
don't have a long list of adjectives. Um, a
but you
long
don't have to. I mean, because you know what? If you look at Elon Musk, if you look at the plan, this goes beyond him. No one has spoken more callously of people than JD Vance. No one is more aggressive than the press secretary. It is Stephen Miller, who we remember from the days of the young woman who claimed that she had been assaulted at Duke. The reason we believe that she was assaulted because Black women have been assaulted throughout our history in this nation.
Yes.
And you know what? No one was ever prosecuted for it. That's how Rosa Parks got famous in Alabama in the first place, because she was chasing these white men down who were raping Black women.
Well,
I mean,
you know,
so
Black Lives. Well, that's why we have a Black Lives Matter movement, because because for so long our lives did not matter, and so it was important to assert that Black Lives Matter. So these idiots, frankly, who was a Blue Lives Matter, no one ever said Blue Lives Matter more than anybody else's. A blue life can kill a Black life, and then all they have to say is, "Oh, I was in fear of my life," when they really weren't. And the next thing you know, they're off. But this, you know, it's happening in the district. It's heartbreaking to see the way that it's affected so many people's day-to-day lives. So many people are saying they're not going out. They're doing they're altering the way they live. It's just like the raid they did on MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. Now, MacArthur Park is usually buzzing with people. People stayed inside. People were not working. They had to take the children. There was a child care program. They had to take the children inside because they were afraid that ICE might scoop up some of the children. They showed a picture of a little girl crying and saying she didn't want anybody to take her mother. So basically, they're altering the way that people are living to the worst.
But you know, I think that's but they want to make us compliant, and while it's hitting Black and brown people first, it is designed to get everybody. If you look at these meetings, these people never thought, and you know what? Look, specialness impacts us all, because there's some Black folks who thought this wouldn't hit them. You know, everybody. You know, when you get special, you think you're indispensable, which is always a mistake. Because what happens to the least of these, Jesus said it, that which you've done unto the least of these, you've also done unto me. Because what Jesus understood was that which you do unto the least of these, you will also do unto me eventually.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing. And I mean, when you want to talk about the melanin deficient, I mean, they're not all evil.
They're not deficient. Who's melanin deficient? Really?
White folks. It's about you see it done on my face to
Julian.
folks.
Julian,
Anyway,
I'm looking at this, but I love you, but that's okay. You're melanin deficient. But
I'm melanin deficient. Well, you know what can I say? I'm a Black everybody else. But here's the point. You own a restaurant. You own a restaurant. You're affected. You know, whether you're Black, white, Latino, you're affected. You have a bookstore where you're counting on foot traffic. You're affected. Everybody is affected by it. What we're going to see, I predict, in the district is a reduction in our tax revenue because there's going to be less commerce. There's going to be less, you know, we rely on our restaurant industry. I think next week may be restaurant week where you know, they have all these deals. I don't think people are going to be patronizing restaurant week in my neighborhood, you know, like they would. Now, they're still going to go to the Fairmont if the Fairmont has a deal. They're still going to go over to, you know, Georgetown if they're deals, but they're not going to. The restaurants off 14th Street, the restaurants off 9th Street. I think that they're going to get a hit.
what do you think is going to happen with the caucus this year, the Black Caucus?
I don't know.
Because that's thousands of Black people who pour into Washington for that week,
spending money, and I don't know that I'm sure that the sister who leads the caucus is going to put something out to make sure that people understand, again, the convention center. Are they going to come storming through the convention center? And if they come storming through the convention center, I pray, and I'm sure that she will, because she's really on top of things, to say to people, these are your rights. No one has a right to demand your ID unless they have a reason. Nobody has a right to hold you. And I hope that Daryl and Barbara and our very adept lawyer friends will be around. And I know Barbara, with her show, the show that you and she and Daryl do, I know that you all will talk about what our rights are, because this is an issue of rights and the diminishment of our rights. And to me, like I said, not a day goes by that I am not confronted by, or maybe I confront, I don't know, so one of the situations that occurs, but they're happening to our people, to our young people.
Mhm.
Like I said, since Friday, I think I've been to have at least 3 incidents where young people were being harassed. And that
Right.
little
And it's
black
going to
woman
continue. Right. And it's going
telling
to
me that
increase.
I
And
done
that's the
started my
concern.
idea. I'm thinking to myself, bring it, heifer, bring it. I
Right.
can.
Well, now,
Well, that's my pugilism coming out.
I
Right.
got you. We're trying to survive, and I
But
mean,
one of the things that you both raised, and I don't want to miss this point, because Santita, one of the things that you were talking about, and Dr. Malvo was talking about, was the purpose of intimidation. That what's going on is intimidation, and they want to silence you. They want to, the quieter you are, the more your right they're going to take, and they're going to keep taking and taking and taking until you yell ouch. And when you start yelling ouch and pushing back, that's when they'll start letting up and start realizing that there's something that's going on here. The question is for everyone: what's your point? What are you willing to give up? At what point are you willing to stand up and go out on the street or whatever your form of protest is, to say that I'm not going to give up my rights? This is not going to happen.
And
That's
that's why, Daryl,
the
it's so
question that's before the folks right now, is to make that determination.
That's why it's so exciting to see all over the city these pop-up protests. They were not like the March on Washington or anything else. It's like Matt said, he was down. I don't know where he was, down but near our museum, the Blacksonian, and there were about 20 people who just like popped up and they were hollering at ICE, "Get out of our neighborhood! Get out of our! Stay away from our museum!"
Mhm.
But these pop-up protests are really a measure as to how people are feeling. That they don't need an
Mhm.
organizer. As soon as they have a critical mass, and the critical mass can be as small as 20 people, they're ready to speak up because they're understanding the impact of it. But the impact that you're seeing with these protests is at the first layer. I saw someone in the chat say, stick to the economic impact, because that's what people want to hear. Well, if we stick to the economic impact, we're seeing it right now. Small business people are seeing it right now. And cities will see it when the tax revenue go down. When the tax revenues go down, what happens? The amount of services that people can afford, the cities can afford, going down. If this man wants to reduce crime in the District of Columbia, return our money, the $1 billion of our tax dollars that Congress has put a hold on, return that. If you want to reduce crime in the District of Columbia, there are 800 vacant police slots available right now. They're looking for 800 more officers, but they don't have the money to hire them. They can probably hire a couple hundred. They can't hire the full 800 that's budgeted to get the district back up to the police force that we need. Now, I don't know that we need that many, and I'm not going to debate that because I'm not a police officer. But what I would say is that we are under, anyone who knows the district knows that we're under police. Tomorrow on my radio show, I'm going to talk to Brother Ron Hampton, who's a 24-year police veteran who was at one point the executive director of the National Black Police Officers Association.
Yes, I've had him. Yeah.
He's great. And he's going to talk. He remembers the FBI and the National Guard coming into district in 68 when we had the uprisings. He remembers other occasions where the police have come, the FBI, the national police have come into the district. And footnote, which many people have raised, but footnote anyway, you couldn't call the National Guard on January 6th.
But they did. But there was a fight with all of that, because that story has not been told, and it was a bipartisan consensus on a lot of mess. So
Yeah,
that's
they can always call, just like he did now. He didn't get
yeah,
anybody.
no, but
he didn't go to Congress. He
No,
just called the National Guard.
but the person who's in charge of the office that is in charge of policing on the Hill, that's Nancy Pelosi. Okay, so there are a whole lot of moving parts here with that. The thing is, if these people want to shut down protests, they know how to do it. And what they're trying to do with Americans, I believe, is make us frightened and compliant.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely shameful. And you all need, the reason I brought this up today, and I'm going to bring you back, Daryl Jones and Dr. Malvo, because I wanted to dig down more deeply into the economic impact. I want to look at the social impact because, as you pointed out, Daryl, you've got a lot of colleges and universities in that town and in the collar areas. I mean, it's dense with students, so that makes Washington is a very unique and interesting community. Not to mention the fact that now we are living in a time unlike the 60s. See, the 60s, they learned a lot of lessons from that too.
Mm-hmm.
What they want to do is shut people down. Interestingly, on the cover of Newsweek magazine, the week after the cover story on Dr. King, right in the week after his assassination, they didn't have a picture of him on the mall giving his "I Have a Dream" speech. They didn't have him at the prayer march that Billy Graham invited him to in '57, leading a march. They had him dead in a casket and a black woman in her wool coat and scarf screaming in grief. That was to kill the movement. These people know exactly what they're doing. This is a calculation, and people need to be mindful. Be mindful. That's why I have to look and try and figure out, okay, so you tell me, I want to know who this guy from Doge is and how it is that 10 people with all of these firings, how did they know him? I don't trust anything in Washington because it's a government town and you don't know who you're talking to in Washington. So my sister said, I noticed this guy on the bus stop. There was just something about him that I noticed. She said a few days later, I was looking at the news and he was leading a coup. I had a teacher in school and he was not very friendly. There was something about him that was a little hostile toward me, but I said, maybe he knows who my father is. I don't know. I've always had to deal with that. Well, I should have known something because it turns out that he was leading a coup on one of these Caribbean nations. And the president who we had killed was a dear friend, and his ambassador used to stay at my parents' house. I said, oh, that's why he was hostile to me. Because he was leading the coup because he didn't like this guy. So, I mean, I'm just saying this is Washington, and everybody, I want you to please be mindful and keep your eyes open and get registered to vote.
Please.
What we have to find out in Texas is because I'm not going to look at Democrats. People who want their Medicare, Medicaid, WIC, and SNAP, who want relief on student loans, who want and need relief, who want a livable wage. Guess what? Your voice has been gerrymandered out of power on the state and federal levels. Let's just put it that way. This is not a partisan thing to me. This is about the people. And all of this is designed to shut us up and shut us down. Don't let them do it. Don't let them do it. Get very, very clear. Get the 900,000 Black and brown people in Texas who are unregistered to vote.
Come on.
You got to vote. You must vote. And you know what? You also have to get in these streets. David K. Johnston, brilliant writer and journalist, said, you know what? In order for us to push back against this authoritarianism, the data shows that 15 to 16 million people need to be in the streets marching. Because you got to march. Pop-up marches are important. But you know what? You have to have a mass movement because these people will react to that.
The organized
Now, will they pull out something about a leader? They're going to tell you that they like women, they like boys, they like something. They're going to tell you they didn't pay their taxes or they couldn't pay their taxes. They don't have enough money. They're about to be evicted. Don't pay attention to any of that. Everybody got that problem. If you want perfection, you be perfect. Now, either you want someone to be present or you want someone to be perfect. You can't be both. You cannot be both. To get on over it, everybody's got personal issues. Nobody is perfect. Nobody. Either you're going to have someone who has the courage to lead and get out here and fight for people, and you fight for them. Because those Texas Democrats shouldn't have to worry about their money. There's enough money in our community for us to raise the money to pay them. What do you need to finish with this protest? I tell you what, that's what Bill and Camille Cosby did for Reverend and Mrs. Jesse Jackson when he was going to run for president, because they said, you do know he can't make any money while he's running. I know y'all ain't got no money, Jackie. So what we're going to do is make sure that you can run.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got all these kids, they're in school, you got to keep your house. And the last thing we want you to worry about are your bills. We want you to run, Jesse, run. Now, either we want to be free or we want to be enslaved. And I'm not just talking to the black members of this audience. I'm talking to white people too, because you are set for indentured servitude. We have got to make some decisions. Where do we go from here? Chaos and community. See, that's why you need to be out here doing what you're doing, Dr. Malvo. You don't need to be president of a university. You need to be doing what you're doing. When can we see you? How can we speak with you? And I hope you begin to get on camera. But how can we hear from you on Mondays?
Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, WPFWFM.org. And I would love to be back on camera. So if you have anybody who's looking for a producer, who's looking for a very loud, very intelligent economist, I'm available.
And what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to speak with your godson, and what we're going to do is put you on StreamYard so people can see you. That's going to make a big difference. Let's start there. You already have what you need. Let's use it. You have. I'm looking at you right now. That's all you need. Daryl.
That boy is an electronic genius. He just fixed something on my phone.
And we're going to get you on. We're going to get you on StreamYard, and then people can see you, and that's going to make a big difference. How about that, Daryl? On Tuesday
at noon Eastern Standard Time, WOLDCnews.com. WOLDCnews.com. Barbara and Arnwine and I break it all down with for you, dealing with voting rights, social rights, civil rights. We're there. We're on it. Please join us. WOLDCnews.com every Tuesday at noon Eastern Standard Time.
All right, everybody. God bless you. And at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time, I'm going to be talking with a brilliant theologian about Gaza and the Greater Israel Project and the two-state solution. We're going to dig down in the theology of this, but we've got to talk about that too. I tell you, there's nothing you can talk about everything all the time. All the time. The Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. See you in a little bit.
Thanks, Santita. Thanks.